Hi, boys and girls. We're going to read the story together and we are going to follow along. You can follow along here. I will play the story and then we're going to stop and we're going to have a discussion and that will help you as you're answering the questions. All right, so here we go.
Rare Treasure, Mary Anning and Her Remarkable Discoveries by Don Brown. In 1799, Mary Anning was born in Lyme Regis, a small English port tucked tightly between cliffs and coast. Mary was poor and her life was as hard as stone. But she was also curious and smart, and her spirit shone. It shone like a gem. Mary's life started with a bang, the bang of thunder. Infant Mary was outdoors with her nursemaid when a sudden and terrible storm burst. The nursemaid grabbed Mary and with two other young women raced to the cover of a nearby elm. The sky exploded and lightning struck the tree. Only Mary survived. It was a miraculous escape. When Mary blossomed into a lively and intelligent child, some townspeople said the lightning had made her that way.
We're going to stop for just a second and we're going to discuss the similes the author uses to describe Mary's life and her spirit. So if you look here, we have first, it talks about her life. Her life was hard as stone. So here is a simile. A simile is when you're comparing two things using the word like or as. Okay, and so we're comparing her life being hard, and they're comparing it to a stone. So if you think about that, why would they compare it to a stone? And the answer would be because they're talking about how hard her life was, how difficult. Okay, so when you compare two things using the word like or as, you compare it to help the reader understand. Then they also say, but, okay, even though her life was hard, she was also curious and smart, and her spirit shone. It shone like a gem. So a gem is a type of like a diamond. It's a type of rock, a very nice, beautiful rock. And so her life was hard like a stone, which doesn't sound very beautiful, right? But her spirit, the inside of her, right? The way she acted, she was like a gem. So even though she had a hard life, she was still amazing, right? Okay. So now we're going to continue.
Mary and her older brother Joseph were just a few years old when they began visiting the nearby rocky beaches with their father. Richard Anning taught them how to hunt for fossils. Fossils were strange and mysterious. Although they had been found before, scientists were just beginning to understand that they were the remains of animals or plants that no longer existed, living things that had died many, many years ago. Usually the remains of plants and animals decompose or are eaten, but sometimes they are covered by dirt or sink in mud. Of these, a rare few lie undisturbed for millions of years. While they are buried, the soft parts, such as flesh, decay, leaving bones, shell, or flat impressions in the earth. Minerals seep into these remains and become stone. These fossils survive hidden in the ground until they are revealed by a shovel or pick, are driven to the surface by an earthquake or volcano, or are uncovered when wind or water wears away the earth.
Okay, the next question. What are fossils? So as you can see, it tells you the answer right here. Okay? It says fossils are the remains of animals or plants that no longer existed, living things that had died many years ago. Okay? And then you continue in 8. Usually the remains of plants and animals decompose or are eaten, but sometimes they are covered by dirt or sink in the mud. Of these, a rare few lie undisturbed for millions of years. Okay, so that is a fossil. They're buried. The soft parts, such as flesh, decay, leaving bones, shell, or flat impressions in the earth. Minerals seep into these remains and become stone. These fossils survive hidden in the ground. Okay, so all of this section here, they're covered with dirt and sink in the mud, and they are undisturbed for millions of years. Okay, so these are the next two. So we're going to continue. So now you know what fossils are here.
The Annings displayed the puzzling yet delightful fossils that they found on a table near Richard's shop on Bridge Street. Wealthy tourists visiting the popular Lyme Regis shore bought them. The family struggled to survive on the earnings of Richard's carpentry work, and the extra money they earned by selling fossils helped. Then Mary's father died, and the family was thrown into bitter poverty. Mary and Joseph still collected and sold fossils they found on the rugged ribbon of shore that separated the sea and the cliffs.
Okay, I'm going to stop there just for a minute. Next question. How did the fossils help Mary's family? What do you think? Go back and reread. Okay, it says that they sold them, and the family struggled to survive on the earnings of Richard's carpentry work. So he was a carpenter, and the extra money they earned by selling fossils helped. So how did the fossils help Mary's family? They sold them, right? And so they were able to have a little bit of money because people were interested in them. All right, so let's continue.
One day, Joseph found a fantastic fossil skull. It was nearly the length of a man's arm and had a long snout that held many sharp teeth. Was it a crocodile? A dragon? A monster? What did the rest of the creature look like? A year passed before Mary discovered the answer. In 1811, Mary found a fossilized skeleton beneath a cliff called Black Ven, where Joseph had found the skull. It looked like a porpoise and was about 7 feet long. Men helped her free the skeleton from the earth. She sold it to a rich neighbor who showed it to scientists. They were thrilled by the rare treasure, a fossil of a reptile that had once lived in the sea. The scientists called the creature ichthyosaur, which means fish lizard. Only a few ichthyosaur fossils had ever been found, and none were as nearly perfect as this one. Almost everyone forgot that it had been found by 12-year-old Mary Anning and her teenage brother. Mary still collected fossils and also earned money from small jobs she did for her neighbors. One of them, Mrs. Stock, gave her a geology book. From it, Mary learned about rocks and mountains and the earth. She read other books and taught herself about animals, fish, and fossils. Years passed. When Mary was 20 years old, she and her mother and brother were still living together. They remained very poor and even sold their furniture to pay their rent. Joseph became an upholsterer, and Mary collected fossils alone. She made it her life's work. It also must have been Mary's great delight, because she pursued it despite the dangers on the rocky shore. Boulders fell from the cliffs. Torrents of thick black mud slid down from the heights. High seas pummeled the shore, and waves could sweep a careless visitor away. But the beach was rich in fossils. As the cliffs crumbled, new fossils were revealed. Many were smaller than your thumb. Others were yards long and embedded in thick, heavy rock. Workers were needed to dig them from the earth, and then horses carted them away.
We're going to stop here. Question 3 is main idea. It says searching for fossils on the rocky shore was dangerous. Do you think that's true or not true? That's right. It is true. How do we know? Because paragraph 21 tells us so. It also must have been Mary's great delight because she pursued it despite the dangers on the rocky shore. So if I told you that the rocky shore was dangerous, that would be considered the main idea. But what are the details that prove that the rocky shore is dangerous? Okay, what are the details that prove it? So reread 21 and look for those details. Okay, so if you were looking at and highlighting, boulders fell from the cliffs, torrents of thick black mud slid down from the heights, high seas pummeled the shore. That means they hit the shore really hard, like a hurricane, and waves could sweep a careless visitor away. Okay, that is your answer. That is the answer and the three supporting details. So we have boulders fell from the cliffs. That's a 1. Torrents of thick black mud slid down from the heights. That's another 1. High seas pummeled the shore. That's even another 1. And waves could sweep careless visitors away. High seas and the waves, that's the same, because the waves are caused from the sea. And there's the picture of her. Okay. So as you can see, she still was not scared, right? Okay. So let's continue. So here she is, 22.
Mary sold her treasures from a small, cluttered shop on Broad Street. There, she freed her latest discoveries from dirt, sand, and rock. Mary worked very carefully, sometimes for days, to avoid damaging the fossils. Sometimes she cemented a fossil to a frame to help support it. She drew pictures of them. She studied her science books. In 1823, Mary discovered the first complete fossil of a plesiosaur, another reptile that had lived in the sea. It was an astonishing 9-foot-long creature with a long serpent-like neck, a lizard's head, a crocodile's teeth, a chameleon's ribs, and the paddles of a whale. The discovery excited scientists. Like Mary's earlier find, the ichthyosaur fossil, it was a rare clue to solving the puzzle of life long ago. What creature had become this jumble of bones trapped in rock? How did it move? What did it eat? How was it like modern creatures? Answering these questions helped reveal the ancient world in which the plesiosaur had lived. Mary Anning's fame grew as people learned that she was an extraordinary fossil collector and a talented scientist. People followed her on fossil hunts. Together, they plodded over the rough rocks, waded knee-deep in water, and scrambled up the cliffs to avoid the crashing waves.
Okay, so now we've learned a lot about Mary. So I want you to answer this question. Was Mary a hard worker? Right, she definitely was a hard worker. How do we know? We just read some text evidence. Do you see here? Well, for one, we know that she went to this very dangerous area to search for fossils, right? We also know that she says, that the author says that Mary worked very carefully, sometimes for days, to avoid damaging fossils. So she worked really hard, obviously for days. So when you're reading and you're looking for your answers, make sure you're going back to the text and you're using this to help you. Okay, then we continue, and we also learn that she became very famous, right? And so people wanted to come along with her. Why do you think the famous scientists wanted to come to look for fossils with Mary? This is a thinking question. It's your answer. What do you think? Okay. So if you said she was an extraordinary fossil collector, that would be a good answer, right? Because it says Mary Anning's fame grew as people learned that she was an extraordinary fossil collector and a talented scientist. So clearly, this would be a good reason people would want to go with her to go look for fossils because she was one of the very rare fossil collectors that were able to find so many fossils. Okay, so we're going to go on.
Once Mary had to rescue a teenager, Anna Maria Pinney, from rough water. Pinney said Mary carried her with the same ease as you would a baby. William Buckland, a famous geologist, brought his family to Lyme Regis to meet Mary and to search for fossils. She escorted Buckland and his children on fossil hunts. Richard Owens, the scientist who invented the word dinosaur, also combed the beach with Mary. Day after day, Mary searched in the shadows of the treacherous cliffs, sometimes walking 10 miles in one day. Her sharp eyes spotted fossils where others saw nothing. Mary's dog trotted faithfully beside her. People said the dog guarded her discoveries while she fetched her tools or got help. During one hunt, part of a cliff collapsed. Heavy rocks crashed at Mary's feet and nearly crushed her. Another time, Mary found a large fossil. She and a helper labored to recover it. The hard work blinded Mary to the rising tide that flooded the beach. Waves drenched the pair, but they saved the treasure. Later, Mary asked the man why he hadn't warned her of the rapidly flowing tide. "I was ashamed to say I was frightened when you didn't regard it," he replied. In 1828, Mary discovered a very rare fossil of a pterodactyl, a flying reptile that had the body of a lizard and the snout of a crocodile. Mary's pterodactyl was displayed at the British Natural History Museum and is still there today. Mary tried to make sense of her discoveries. She read her science books and studied her collection. Mary shared her ideas with the finest scientists. They prized the thoughts of the remarkable young woman who had left school when she was 11. It was said, "She knows more about the science than anyone else." By 1836, Mary had found the fossils of 3 ichthyosaurs, 2 plesiosaurs, a pterodactyl, a strange shark-like fish called Squaloraja, and an untold number of small or incomplete fossils. Mary's fossil shop on Broad Street was now crowded with customers. One visitor wished to record the name of the woman who had assembled such a wonderful collection. With a firm hand, Mary wrote her name in the man's notebook. "I am well known throughout the whole of Europe," she said proudly. Mary Anning lived from 1799 to 1847, but her spirit dwelled in a time millions of years ago, when the monsters and dragons we now call dinosaurs roamed. She had little money, but she was rich in spirit. She was unschooled, but the professors heeded her words. She rarely strayed from her home, but her name became known everywhere. Mary Anning pried fossils from the ground, but it was knowledge that she unearthed.
Okay, so we have 3 more questions. So the author says something in the last paragraph about her, and he says these things about Mary. The first one is, he said, she had little money, but was rich in spirit. So here we are. She had little money, but she was rich in spirit. What do you think the author meant by this? She had little money, but she was rich in spirit. They talked about that in the beginning of the text also, right? About her spirit. Your spirit is the way you act. Are you positive? Are you negative? Are you nice? Are you mean? So when they say she had little money, that meant she didn't have much money. So she wasn't rich, but being rich in spirit means she was happy. She was very, very happy, and she felt very fulfilled in her job. The next thing the author says is she was unschooled, but the professors heeded her words. So she was unschooled means she didn't have any education. She really didn't have much education as far as being like the professors who went to college and universities and they studied a lot. She learned a lot about fossils, but she really was unschooled. But the professors heeded her words. That means they listened to her. And why did they listen to her? Because she was able to do so well, her actions. So again, there's a saying that says action speaks louder than words. So you can be very knowledgeable, but if you are knowledgeable, but maybe like all these professors who couldn't find the fossils, the fossil hunters, they really they understood that she was very good at what she did, even though she didn't have schooling. She didn't go to college. So then the next thing says, she pried fossils from the ground, but it was knowledge that she unearthed. It's a very, very good ending. And the author decides to say this ending. Here it is. She pried fossils from the ground, but it was knowledge that she unearthed. And so, what does that mean to you? What do you think? She literally did get fossils from the ground, right? We know that's true. And when you pull a fossil out of the ground, you're unearthing it. You're taking it out of the earth. That's where the word unearthed comes from. Okay. But knowledge, it's saying who got the knowledge? She did. So by working and looking for all those fossils, she earned and was able to become very knowledgeable in what she did. Okay. So that's your next question. Okay. And that's the next one you're going to fill in. If you need to replay it, go ahead and good luck. And we will see you in class.